Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guests here, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Kelsey Bernhart on the podcast. She's a nationally qualified NPC bikini competitor, as well as a lifestyle nutrition coach, coming to us all the way from San Diego. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Kelsey, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hello. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So before we get into your journey, I gotta ask, what is the weather like in California today?
Unfortunately, no clouds in the sky, about 80 degrees, light breeze from the ocean. It's really, really difficult.
I hate her already. Jeez, I mean, we've had so many guests on from California, and my older brother, he used to live there for about a year, but yeah, that's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, we just got done with a huge rainstorm up here in Minnesota, and it's still, I mean, this is perfect weather for me actually. Now that it's like super cloudy where the sun's not out, so like I can actually like go outside and enjoy my life with my pale skin. But so that's ideal weather for me technically, but it's still really dreary. But before I depress everyone with my skin woes, why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired and what motivated you to get in shape and adapt this healthy and fit lifestyle?
Yeah. Well, through high school, I played volleyball and track. My senior year, I decided to stop. I went into my collegiate experience, joined a sorority, did all that fun stuff, just got into the college lifestyle. So by the time my senior year rolled around, I'm like, wow, I really, don't look the way I did when I joined college. and decided to just kind of make a little turnaround. So when I'm from the Midwest. So when I moved to Kansas City, I decided to make a lifestyle change. I started with going to the gym, and I wasn't really seeing a lot of changes like I was hoping. I was lifting and doing cardio, and really just overworking my body. So that's when I linked up with my competition coach Lance, and we got the nutrition piece. And that's when I was kind of like, I just want to jump in, do something to commit myself, and really, that has an end goal. So that's why I was like, I'm going to do competing, because my roommate at the time was a competitor. Her name's Ashton, and she actually worked for Angel Competition Bikinis. So it was really my like motivation was between hitting a plateau physically and also, just different people in my life who are already doing that. So I kind of just jumped in blindly, not really knowing what exactly it consisted of. And then, yeah, now I've been competing. This is my second season, my second year within competing.
That's the way you do it. You just jump in blindly and just don't even ask questions. No, yeah, I always just find that interesting, which is why I love to ask that question. But one of the questions that I love to ask, every single guest that I have on the podcast, health and fitness wise, is that, I always say if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape. Whether it comes down to, I mean, your diet, how many reps you do, what exercises you do. There are just so many minuscule things that add up to the overall package that people end up seeing. Was that a struggle for you when you were getting started, just figuring out what worked best for you? Because I always say, if you were to walk up to someone and say, hey, what did you train for this body part? It looks amazing. What works best for them 99% of the time is not going to work as good for you.
Right. So it's funny you say that. So when I first got into the lifting lifestyle, because I was obviously like more cardio oriented before I had learned right form and all of that. So I worked at Lifetime Fitness for 5 years, and I had a buddy who was going through college that was basically studying to become a personal trainer, and that's what he ultimately does now. So we worked together there. And when I very first started lifting, this is years prior to actually getting into bodybuilding and all of that. So don't want to say I went from there to competing in 6 months, because that definitely didn't happen. But Jordan basically was like, I'm going to put you through a leg day, and I'm going to get you off the machine. And that's when I was like, oh, I don't want to lift. I don't want to get bulky. And obviously, yeah, we all know how that is. So I get on a leg press, and I'm like, I can't do 45s on each side. I'm going to do 10s, because that's heavy. I can't do that. And obviously that's nothing. So I went from a very low base, like not even really knowing how to do leg press within like 3 years before I actually started competing. Then I did a 3 year build up. And yeah, I mean, within that 3 years, obviously I learned a lot. I've definitely tailored to my body, and it's even like, yeah, you can say, oh, yeah, I like doing flies, and flies works really well for me, and that's going to build my caps really well. And like you said, it's not going to work for everybody. And depending on what division you're in, like if you have a newer girl is wanting to go into figure, she shouldn't be taking workouts from a bikini girl necessarily, because they're going to be building different parts of the body. I guess that's the best way to address that question.
No, 100%. I totally agree with that. We've actually had a story where it was a figure girl and then a bikini coach, and she's like, "Yeah, I wasn't really getting big enough for really the figure category." And I was like, "Well, I hate to break it to you, but that's kind of the thing." But yeah, I just find that fascinating because I made the mistake too when I was in high school. One of my friends was just one of those weird genetic freaks who, they could just walk into the gym and, just looking at the weights, they'd get bigger. So I tried to get him to train me because I was like, okay, dude, I got to get like shoulders like you. Or it didn't work. So yeah, you got to really find out what works best for you. But yeah, and speaking of genetic freaks, I mean, I hate those people with all of my heart. And I mean, I've had two of them on the podcast where one of them was a woman where I was like, okay, there's no way that you just look like that from barely working out. And then she showed me a photo. She had a photo right next to her when she was like 10 years old. She had like an 8-pack, and I was like, okay, we're done talking here. It's like, get off my podcast. It's like, we're done here. But no, I always love to say, that this just those weird genetic freaks. But that kind of leads into my next question that I love to ask every guest that I have on is, everyone always has that one body part when they get started that really, really takes off, that they don't have to train as much. And then everyone always has that one body part that lags behind. They have to train to overdrive to get it to catch up with everything. I'll give you mine first, but for me, I mean, my back, just because I had jobs all throughout college of lifting and loading packages into trucks. I worked in warehouse jobs for when I was in college. So basically, you got a really nice back or you quit. That's basically the two options that really happen. But for me, I'm also 6'3", so my legs are just shot where, I mean, I have to train my lower body into overdrive just to get it to look like any semblance like I work out legs. I mean, I still have friends every day that when I go to the gym, they just always make the joke. They're like, "Hey, Ryan, you plan on training legs anytime this year?" And then I'm just like, "Oh, okay, come on." I know. Hey, they're creative. I'll give them that. I'll give them that. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
See, I struggle because I have a runner's body type, so I'm naturally super lean. And so, yeah, just putting on muscle all around was difficult for me. But I would say my lower body caught on faster than my upper body. I'm still definitely working on shoulders. I got the squared down, but I'd really like to build the caps. So I'd say, yeah, my shoulders are probably where I struggle. But yeah, probably like glutes and hammies are probably my stronger point.
Yep, I always say, well, for me, also the number one that I hate the most is calves, though, too, because that's the one thing that is the most genetic thing of all time. Where I mean, I always say I could inject pure muscle into my calves and they wouldn't gain an ounce. So yeah, I don't know if anyone has any secrets out there. I mean, I'm more than happy to hear them out. But how long into really getting into the working out before you decided that you wanted to compete? How long was that process?
About 3 years, yeah. And that's before the nutrition piece though. So I had been lifting pretty much since my freshman year in college is when I really got into it. I did have that lifestyle that didn't really make sense with my goals. And so that's why I wasn't really seeing what I was wanting to see. But the actual gym aspect was about 3 years. Once I graduated, that's when I really started competing. So yeah, it was about a 3 year span.
I cannot tell you how much I struggled with that too. When you're going out and drinking and partying every weekend, and you're like, you're looking on why am I not gaining any? Like, I mean, I gaining a little bit, but it's like I should be gaining more with the amount of time that I do with that. And I still have friends to this day. I mean, I just turned 25, but I still have friends to this day who are just like, I'm working out like 4 or 5 times a week, but I'm like, well, I saw your Snapchat from this last weekend, so I can tell you why you're not gaining and why you're not really losing that much weight. So yeah, that's one thing that I think every college person suffers from. But you led me perfectly also into the next question of what was probably the biggest nutritional change that you had to make when you started to take things seriously.
Actually adding in food, because I was like, so I had connected with someone in college who put together a meal plan for me, and they're like, this is how you're going to lose weight. Sure enough, I did. I mean, when I first started, I like started lifting and putting in a nutrition piece. Obviously, BMI is a little bit off no matter where you go. But that specific BMI scale said I was around like 30% body fat, which I was like, okay, we need to fix this. I'm like, even if it's off by slight, that's a lot. So they put in a meal plan for me. I followed that and never changed it. So it was like I followed that for a year and a half on top of like drinking and everything. And so obviously I eventually I plateaued. I lost weight, I plateaued and didn't get anywhere. So then when I picked up with Lance, my competition coach, he really was like, okay, you want to compete? Well, let's put some more muscle on you. Let's give you more food because you're already, I think I was eating like 1,400 calories. And so he's like, yeah, consistently for like a year and a half. And it's like just not good. And so, yeah, he really kind of pulled me out of that piece and was like, all right, let's restart your body and get this going. So yeah, it's actually the opposite. I was eating clean. I just need more food.
That's one of the benefits that I love to tell people who are trying to talk to me about, getting in shape and adapting a more healthy and fit lifestyle is you get to eat more. I mean, it's like for a lot of the people, you get to eat a lot more than you're eating right now. But yeah, that's also just another huge thing with me too, where I was like, I got to eat more now. It's like that's one thing that really, really just helped me out along the way. But one of the things when it comes to competing that I always love to talk about is that if you're to poll the general public, 95% of the general public would not be able to get into shape or not be willing, I'd say, to really make that sacrifice to get into shape just to be able to go on a prep. Because let's face it, being in shape to go on a prep takes so much hard work and determination, dedication that so many people wouldn't be able to do it. But then when you're going on a prep, you are just notching things up to an extreme where it comes down to, I mean, you got to get all of your workouts done. Your nutrition has got to be just down pat. You got to have all of your meals ready. I mean, everything just becomes it's basically a living hell, I like to describe it as. But I mean, everything just has to be so scientific. What is that change and what is that adjustment like for you when you go into that? Because everything just seems your life basically revolves around it. What is that adjustment like for you when you go on from, just your off season to just going into a prep?
I love it. I love the structure. So I work with Lance year round. Up until this off season, my last show was June 22nd of this year. I just recently, within the last few weeks, started a flexible dieting with macros rather than a meal plan. We tried a meal plan for like 2 weeks last year, and I was like, I can't be trusted. We got to stick with the meal plan because without that structure, I genuinely struggle. So with prep, it's like this is what it is, and we do meal plan preps just because that's how I process, and that's how I work and function correctly. But yeah, I mean, I have no problem transitioning just because I do have that structure. I have a set schedule every single day, and I'm a huge busybody. So something that's nice is like, okay, I need to wake up early, I need to do my cardio, I need to get ready, I need to go to work. Once I'm off work, walk the dog, go back to the gym, and I'm done. And then I just have that same schedule every day. So, and I know that's not sustainable for a lot of people, but I personally function really well on it. I actually kind of thrive during prep. I love prep. So.
Okay, quick tangent here because I'm a huge dog lover. What kind of dog do you have?
I have two, and one of them's sleeping under me. I just got a new puppy, so I almost want to show you.
Oh yeah, I actually saw that on your Insta. I was actually gonna. That's one thing I totally forgot. You got a golden retriever, right?
Yeah, well, he's a golden labradoodle.
My God, yeah. I know I am the biggest dog lover. We have a little Cavachon, a little, little 10-pound dog that I always make sure I take her on an extensive walk before so she isn't barking or going absolutely crazy during it. So she's dead. She's basically dead in the living room right now. But no, I am one of the biggest dog lovers you'll ever meet in your entire life. I always say one of my favorite podcast experiences is that we had a dog who literally was the most camera photogen. I mean, its face would literally just keep going like right into the camera, and then we're like, okay, we got to move the dog now. But yeah, it was a big Siberian Husky. But yeah, that's my dog tangent, everyone. Yeah, I'm just an absolute huge dog lover. But going back into competing, one of the things that I love to talk about, especially with the competition part, and it's probably the number one thing that I would have never guessed in a million years, is the hardest thing for so many of the guests that I have on is the posing. I mean, I have never
Yeah.
would have guessed that in a million years, but now I like to compare it to being a perfect driver, where you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like?
Yeah. I, I struggled. And so I really synced up with a local girl named Ariana, and she's in Kansas City. And she's actually nationally qualified, and she's been actively competing for her pro card. And so she really helped me, phase into posing. Another gal named Kelly, who also was a local girl in Kansas City. And I really just learned from my peers. And it took a lot of time. I'm not going to lie. I literally would have my significant other sit there and be like, quarter turn to the right, quarter turn to the right. That looks horrible. Try again. Like we spent a lot of time doing that and a lot of patience. And yeah, it's definitely not easy, especially if you don't have a trained eye, because then you can be like, oh, I look great. And it's really like, you got to tweak three, couple half inches that way. Yeah, it's something. And it changes a whole physique.
Out of all of your poses, or out of all your quarter turns and your turns that you do, what is your favorite and what is your least favorite?
So that actually changed recently. I used to do that front pose where you have one, leg forward and you kind of like twist your hip out. That's what I used to do. And then I realized that I had some good glute growth this last off season. So now I just like that standard where you have the, prominent hip and you're just like, I don't know the exact name for the pose to be honest, but you know what I'm talking about.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's my favorite. My least favorite is just transitioning from the side pose. Just because I'm not good in the heels. I mean, I make it work, but when I'm trying to turn around on stage, it's slick and it's not fun to do. I don't want to slip. So, um,
I always say the only pose that I would really enjoy the most if I ever competed would be the back pose, just because that would be the one pose where you can really get your breath in. You can really just be like, okay, I can put my smile down. I can breathe a little bit. It's
wrong,
wrong.
wrong. You cannot do that. Nope. Because when you drop your smile, they know. Because you always see people on stage who drop their smile and they don't start smiling until they're already turned around because it happens so fast. So they're here, they drop their smile and they're like this, you know? And so the trick is to always keep your smile going, and it's just going to keep your mindset. And that's how I was taught. I mean, there's girls who do that and who are successful and don't smile all the way through, but I personally feel like it helps you keep focused and keep it together. And also when you're breathing, you got to keep it tight. If you're breathing too much, you won't have that hourglass. So you just got to be careful.
I would have never thought about that because, well, the funny thing is, I had a guest from Australia on like 2 weeks ago, and she was talking about how she was told that she would have placed better if she would have smiled the entire time. So that's just, I always say those poor jaw muscles out of, all the things that you guys do is probably one of the worst. But another thing that I would have never guessed with the whole posing aspect is that for so many of these people going through a posing session, you sweat and you get more tired than you do from usually an average workout when you go through a posing session, just because you're getting everything to just flex properly. You're getting everything timed down. I mean, it just, for so many people, it just is such a, I mean, I never really got it until I started having guests on and really talking about it, but it's just such a trying endeavor. But you talked about it, and I love to bring this up because, especially, well, only for the female bodybuilders, because it's the only one that it's the only, thing that affects them more than the guys is the heels that they make you wear. I mean,
Yeah.
don't these poor people already go through enough? I mean, but then they make you wear the heels. What has your experience been like with those heels? Because it's hard enough to go through your normal posing routine without having to wear heels.
Yeah. So I like them because they put the whole look together, and with the heels. So in NPC, they suggest that you should do between a 4 to 5 inch heel. The standard's 5 inch. And that's just because it lifts. So it makes everything lift, it makes your whole physique look better, and it makes you look more polished. And so that's why they do it. And I understand that. Again, the only reason I would say I won't like them is because of the pivoting on stage between poses. But personally, I have no bad experience in walking in them. I actually like them. I think they're kind of fun. Yeah, when I first started competing, I made jokes like, "Hey, look at my stripper heels," because they're gonna look like. But yeah, they're fun. I think it just makes a polished look. So
I always say one of my biggest mistakes I've ever made in this podcast is I had a girl from Texas on, and I asked her about that, and I said, "Did you have any experience, with heels before that?" And I totally forgot that if you're talking to a girl from the South, they're basically born in heels. I mean, they,
yeah,
they come out of the womb in heels. She's like, "Child, please. I've been wearing heels my entire life." And I was like, "Oh, well, okay. I didn't mean any offense by that." But yeah, no. So yeah, when you said you're from the Midwest, I was like, okay, you got to ask about the heels because all the northern-ish girls I got to ask that about, but all the southern ones, I just ignore that question completely. I learned my lesson the hard way. But now we go to a fun question that it's a self-depreciating question where one of the palest people you'll ever meet in your entire life. I mean, I could be a vampire in a past life or even now. I mean, my parents, I do work nights, so that is kind of, it does kind of raise a little few eyebrows to me. But obviously, being this pale, I will never be tan a day in my life. I either get farmer's tan or I get burnt to an absolute crisp. I mean, I went to a Minnesota Twins game a couple of weeks ago, and I told my friends, I was like, okay, we're sitting in shade. There's no way I'm not going to the game unless we're in shade seats. I was out in the sun for probably about half an hour just waiting to get the tickets or just like walking to the stadium. I am still peeling off sunburned skin from from like 2 weeks ago, so I just can't deal with that. So I've never been tan a day in my life, but you bodybuilders get to get tan. What is that experience like for you when you get that tan on? Because we hear so many stories about, how you see muscles that you never even knew that you had. Everything really seems to pop out. What is that like for you?
Well, I'm going to preface with if you ever competed, you would be a 3-coat person. You'd have to get 3 coats if
Probably
you're that
more than
tan.
that. Let's be honest, more than that. More than that.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised how well it covers. So, I honestly love getting the tans. I think it's one of the more fun parts, just because I personally love tanning. I'm not gonna lie, I openly spray tan often, because I'm very pale myself. I'm pretty much transparent, like you can see blue veins through my arms, so it's like very bad. My coach actually made a joke. He said, only you would move to California and get more pale because I stopped spray tanning for a hot second and he didn't realize. And so I'm like, well, it happens. So, but yeah, no, I love it because your physique completely changes from that morning, that Friday morning before the show or Thursday, depending on what show you're doing, to that first like coat of tan. Your whole physique changes, and it's interesting because like the primary vendor right now is Pro Tan for tanning, and it's interesting because the second layer, obviously you get darker, but then it creates depth. So when the stage light hits you, the layering, the way the light reflects, it actually makes everything look more defined. So even backstage, you're looking at yourself, you're like, yeah, I'm really freaking tan, but you don't really see like the muscle difference. And then you see people get on stage and they're just shredded. Like it's guys and girls. I mean, everyone looks really good backstage, but on stage, it's like insane. But it's really because that light, there's like reflection through the tan. It's crazy.
I always gotta say, out of all the positives that happen with that, though, the one negative or one of the many negatives, especially with that tan, though, is that you can't really sit on anything. You can't really lean against anything. I mean, you got to bring your own bed sheets if you're competing at like a hotel or anything. I mean, that just adds on again to, just the checklist of basically what these competitors have to go through when it comes to getting ready for these shows, which is what I love to talk about on this show. But now a question that I ask all of my guests, whether they be, my bands or my health and fitness guests. For my bands, I always like to ask, what is that feeling like when you get to go on stage and perform live in front of hundreds to thousands of people? That also applies to the bodybuilders, though. What is that feeling like when you get to walk up on stage and show off all of that hard work that you've worked months upon months on?
So it's funny you say that. I actually kind of black out. I don't remember it. I get like extreme stage fright, and I just practice enough that I know when I go up there, it's gonna be fine and it's gonna look fine. But mentally, I don't really remember a lot of it. I get really bad jitters sitting backstage, and I like jitters of excitement and nervousness. But I'm excited because I watch all the other gals I'd spent all day, meeting and talking to on stage, killing it. Like girl named Miranda is her first show, my last competition, and she just killed it. I mean, it was a huge show, and I was so excited for her. But then I was like, oh crap, I'm getting on stage. But yeah, I just kind of black out through the whole thing. Because I thought I'd get over that stage right after the first show, and I'm 5 shows deep, and that is yet to change. And so I don't think it's going to change anytime soon.
I was gonna say my next question always is, what's that? Does it feel like time speeds up or time goes by really slow? But she blacked out. Everyone, she doesn't. She's not really able. She's not really able to tell. But you brought up an interesting thing that I find so interesting too, especially since bodybuilding's a sport, but it's one of those sports where everyone really seems to be so supportive of each other. Like you're talking about, you get to know these girls, backstage. You really get to talk to them, and it's just so supportive. How important is that to you as a competitor in this sport, knowing that there's so much support in this sport when it comes to competitors with other competitors?
No, it's awesome because so my last season, I obviously was new to the industry. I didn't know a lot of girls who were competing. So honestly, it was kind of lonely because I was still primarily hanging out with my college friends who were still doing the same things, going out in the city and all of that. And I obviously had to cut that out of my life. So from my first show to my fifth show, a huge difference. I've built this community of amazing girls that I've met throughout all these shows, even just in the gym who I found are competitors. And it makes a really big difference. So a lot of people actually end up messaging me and asking me about like, hey, what's one of the tips or what would you say to a new bikini competitor? And I tell them find a community. I mean, even if it's virtual, like if you live in Seattle, I've heard that's a problem for some reason. A lot of people move there and then can't find anyone in the community on a lot of Facebook chats.
Well, that's their own problem moving to Seattle. I mean, it's like you shot yourself on the foot on that one, basically. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, just finding community virtually or, meeting girls through the experience because it's such a selfish sport and no one else will understand it. Even like my significant other, I live with him and he gets it, but he doesn't get it still. And it's been, 2 years. So it's nice to have someone to relate to.
Does he go to the gym at all? Does your significant other, does he sort of enjoy a
Oh yeah.
health? Yeah. Okay. Well, I was gonna say at least there's that, because we've had some guests on where they're like, no, he doesn't touch a weight, and I was like, well, I mean, I guess that's if that's like your time, but I gotta say it's so important too to have at least someone else like close to you that really goes to the gym too, because that really helps out. Because then otherwise you're just gonna be going there, like all by yourself. So that is just a huge thing. And yeah, that support and that just community that it involves. I mean, even though I've never done it myself, but just through starting this podcast and having all these guests come on and just finding out about the community and just having that support online, I mean, it is just it means the world, even just to me, not even as a competitor. So I can't even imagine what it's like for a competitor. But now we go to another fun question. What is your go-to post-show meal?
It changes every time. First time I wanted this bagel ice cream cookie sandwich. So my wonderful significant other had this like freeze dried ice cooler for me. It was all extra, but it was wonderful. Then there was sushi. This year it was, what was it? Giant cookies, like stacked cookies. They're amazing. So extra though. I was so sick. I ate one cookie and I was sick through Monday. I was like physically ill because it was just not good. Don't eat, don't overeat. I need to preach that enough. Do not overeat. But then my second show, I made a homemade blueberry buckle cake, which is like a family recipe, and it's amazing. So, and that one went over well. I wasn't sick after that. So it changes every time, but something sweet, something fruity. I don't know.
It's my least favorite question to ask because I always drool. I'm even just thinking about drooling just right now, just thinking about all of that food. It's my least. But I always said if I competed, I would just rent out a Five Guys. I'd just take out like $1,000 and just be like, here you go. I'm buying you out for the night. You're gonna feed me until I basically either die, puke, or pass out. But either way, I am going to get my money's worth. But yeah, that is, when it comes to shocking things that I've learned throughout this podcast, that is one of the big ones too, is that because you guys have dieted down so much, you're not able to just pig out. Like a lot of times, like you see on Instagram, they're like, oh my God, here's this big old steak that I'm ordering. It's like, you're not going to finish that steak.
You're gonna eat about 6 bites and be like, I'm
Yeah.
way too full.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your body's just not used to that. And I remember I took a health class in college and they were talking about how, like if you starve yourself for a significant amount of time, not saying that you guys really starve yourself, but just like if you're like in a survival situation, you're not encouraged to, just go and pig out afterwards, because then your body's just you're gonna get sick. But yeah, so that I always think about that when I'm talking about that. But one of the biggest myths and misconceptions, I mean, there's two of them, so I'll give them back to back. But for the first one, I always love to say, so many people don't realize that look that you guys put on stage, that is not a sustainable look. I mean, we've had so many people where they're just shocked by that. I mean, I have friends that come up to me and say, "Hey, I love listening to the podcast, but that's the number one thing that they're shocked by." And I think it's partially due because I always like to compare it to like those weight loss shows where, like Biggest Loser, where these people lose like 150 pounds and they're able to keep the weight off. So I think people think that that's similar with bodybuilding, where like if you look like that when you're on stage show, you're going to be able to look like that 24/7, which is not true at all. I mean, some people try to prolong it and try to make that look last as long as possible. Normally their careers don't last as long because the body is just not meant to be that lean and that shredded. But what was that experience like for you when you learned that, hey, this is not a sustainable look. I'm not going to be able to keep this look, because so many people talk about how, they might get like depressed. They might get, just anxious, just realizing that out of all of this hard work that I put into this prep, I am not going to be able to maintain it. What is that like for you? And how has that evolved as your career has gone on?
Yeah, so that's actually something Lance sat me down and talked to me about because he was like, when we get you that lean, you're not staying there. What you just said is basically the conversation we had. And I was like, yeah, I understand that. We're good. Let's just do it. So I get through my first show or my first couple shows, my first season, and it was time. And I was like, okay, it's summer. Can we just, like slowly get into it? So we spent like 10 weeks or so, like slowly reversing. But I definitely wish I would have went a lot faster because it was pretty much, I was like in prep for that 10 weeks. And it's definitely difficult to, be in that mindset because you're like, I just worked 4 or 5 months to get these abs and you want me to lose them in 10 days. I'm like, no, but yeah, it's just something you have to go in knowing. And that's something unfortunate about the industry is Some people who jump in don't know that or don't have that conversation before, and it's like, and that's when the issues develop, and that's where it kind of gets the bad rap from, where people come out kind of messed up, and it's just because they didn't have those conversations. So
I always say I had one guest who came on, and it was right before his first ever show, and he was talking about, like, like, hey, I just want to stay looking like this, and I was like, do I have to break it to him, or am I just gonna am I gonna be the responsible person and break the news to him, or am I just gonna be like, hey, yeah, you can do it, you can keep looking like that? But no, I told him, I was like, hey, just to let you know, this is, I'd already had about 20 bodybuilders on, and I said, hey, just to let you know, I had these guests on, and here's what they were talking to me about. But yeah, I mean, that would be one really hard thing for me too. And we've heard stories, about a week afterwards, putting on like 40 pounds, especially for some of the guys, just those drastic weight changes. And it's just so shocking. And I think it's just such an important thing to talk about, because Instagram doesn't really do it justice. Because a lot of times people, they save the images from their shows and they post them, all throughout the year, which, more power to them. I mean, I can totally understand why people get that, because if you're in your off season and you're really about, promoting your fitness brand and really about, becoming a coach, I totally understand that. But it's just the transparency thing too is what I really, really would love more when it comes to Instagram. But now, our another myth and stereotype that I love to bust, and we talked about this before we started recording, but again, Instagram has done so many wonders when it comes to this. I mean, it's gotten better the last 5 years with Instagram, but I still say, there's still so many women that have that fear, and a few guys too, but the vast majority of it is women, where, I mean, if they have that fear where if they walk into the gym and they do one bicep curl, they do one push-up or pull-up, anything that has to do with anything that's not cardio, they're just going to put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight and turn into the Incredible Hulk. And first of all, pass those genetics on to me if you have that. I mean, you'd be,
right.
I always say, you'd be kidnapped by the government. They'd probably like take those genetics out of you and try to like put it in like everyone's body. I mean, you would be the biggest commodity of all time. You were talking about how you did sort of have that fear a little bit when you were getting started, and how did that evolve, and how do you like to respond to that now, knowing that, I mean, you are a nutrition coach, and you are still, and even just going to the gym, you're going to hear that probably a lot. How do you like to respond to that?
Yeah, so think of it this way. So when you're doing cardio, it can be useful for your body. It can get you to a point where you're going to be burning fat for a certain period of time. Now, if you go over that period of time, it might turn into a muscle burning. And that's where you start, leaning out, but in the wrong ways. And the fat deposits are going to look different on your body. And it's not going to be it's going to be the cardio body that you see. So when you're lifting weights and then doing, I do hardly any cardio, even through prep. Well, this year we stepped up a little bit the last month, but I was doing pretty much no cardio during prep. When you're lifting weights, your body is constantly burning. When you're lifting weights, your muscles are expanding, and that sounds scary, but in the end, that's what's going to give you that toned look. And you can tailor your workouts in a way that you won't fluff your muscle rather than building lean muscle. And again, it'll continue that burn sensation that you'd be wanting from the cardio, and it's going to burn fat and grab the energy from the fat rather than your muscle, and so it's going to like really make you shrink down. So that's kind of the misconception, is because they think, I mean, there are certain workouts and different like variations that you can do that's going to make your muscle fluff essentially, but that's just, I mean, part of it. And if you want, a lot of people, when they're wanting to lose weight, they're looking for the hourglass figure. Well, your body doesn't naturally do that. You have to have muscle mass to form that figure, and that's what bodybuilding is. You build your body to fit the form that you're looking for. And so, I mean, you have to do weights if you want to hit that body type.
It's almost like the sport is called bodybuilding because you build your body. That's what I always like to say. It's kind of weird. It's kind of eye-opening. Yeah, no, I know. I always just find that, I always love to make that joke. But yeah, it's just so important to dispel that, because I always like to tell the story of when I was in college and I started working out and getting in really good shape. I had a friend, and she came up to me and she said, Ryan, I see all these changes that you're making. I want to go to the gym, but I'm just afraid that I'm going to get too bulky. And I told her, I said, look, the amount of weight that you carry in your purse when we go out to clubs or when we go out to get something to eat, she had a very heavy purse. I do not know what she had that thing. No, a women's purse, that's your own thing. She had, I mean, it weighed at least 20 pounds. So I don't know if she had like a dead body in there or something like that. I don't know if like one of her sorority sisters really pissed her off one of these nights, but I didn't ask any questions, but I said, the amount of weight that you carry in that purse, I mean, you are not getting an ounce of muscle from lugging that thing around 24/7. And that really convinced her. And then she went to the gym, and then, she really enjoyed it. But the number one thing that I love to talk about when it comes to that, that I think it affects women so much more positively than it does men is the confidence boost that working out gives you. I mean, we've heard so many stories of women who, they've been able to make these life-changing decisions, or it's just been really helping out with their confidence, going to the gym and just seeing those results and just getting that, just that energy boost that it gives you and just that happiness. What has that been like for you, that confidence boost that you got from working out, and how have you used it to impact every other aspect of your life? Because I always say that is the one thing that you can take from the gym and use it to affect every aspect of your life.
Yeah, so it's kind of my day driver. I mean, I used to, so I'm gonna go a little off key here, but I used to work out after work. I'm an 8 to 5 worker, so like after, at 6 o'clock, I'd work out at night, and I actually changed that recently to a 4 a.m. workout. So now I use that as like my day starter, and it really improved my day. I mean, I'm a lot more energized. I'm happy. I feel like my body's actually working. So I mean, sitting at a desk is hard, and so it's hard. Getting that kickstart really helps you, wake up and make your body feel better. So to address that piece. But yeah, the confidence piece is, I mean, key. I mean, it's so different, and I just feel different walking around just as a person, even if it's my off day. I mean, I feel awesome.
And that's just so awesome. But how long into your journey before you decide that you wanted to become a nutrition coach and help out others?
Um, I would say probably the last 2 years or so is really when that piece came into fact for me. Just because that's when like the huge turning point happened is when I first started competing, where I was like, I had been in the nutrition piece for a few years, and I'd already been actively working out. And so that turning point when I first started prepping is when I was kind of like, I can really see where this difference happens in people, and that's where it was really changing for me. And I was like, that's going to help. I can help other people make that change too. Um, and so yeah, I think it was when my huge turning point happened personally and mentally, is also when I was like, I need to help other people do this too.
No, and that's so important. I always say if you can find a job where you can help out others, it's some of the most fulfilling things that you can do. But a question that I love to ask all of the lifestyle coaches, or the personal trainers that I have on, I always love to ask, because we see on Instagram, all these transformation photos and all these stories of the trainee, what it's like for them to have lost all this weight and to get in better shape. But what is that like for you as the person that has helped these people out with their nutrition or just their lifestyle and just getting them in shape? Does that make everything worthwhile, just knowing that you have helped this person make that drastic change in their life?
Yeah, it's exciting, and it's fun to see that happen, and the whole transformation. And because usually it follows not just their body like change, but they're like, hey, I'm doing better at work, or I'm doing better at school, or I'm feeling better in my personal life, or I'm having a better relationship. And it's because they're making life changes. It's not, yeah, maybe they just change eating pizza twice a week to eating, something a little bit more on the healthier end of it, just making small tweaks. Following that, they're like, okay, I'm being better here. Maybe I can be better here, and just making small tweaks. And even people I'm not working with, like there's certain individuals that virtually, I mean, personally, I don't know. Virtually, I know them really well. And they reach out and they're like, hey, look at this prep picture. Like, this is where I'm at in prep. And I'm like, that's awesome. Or like lifestyle clients are like, hey, in the last like 4 months, I've lost this much weight, and I've been like looking at your recipes you post, and that's helped me like find cool meals and stuff like that. And even when I'm not personally working with them and I see that transformation, it makes me feel good too, just because, people are using my information as a resource, and it's helping them better themselves. And that's kind of what I'm trying to create. And it's nice knowing that, it's nice seeing that other people can do it. And it's nice, it's another story, it's another life change. And it's, in the end, just gonna like better them in the future.
100%. And I'll leave a link to all of her stuff down below, her Instagram page, all of that other stuff. And now we go to our audience favorite, my personal favorite part of the podcast, the little questionnaire. We're going to ask Kelsey here about a half a dozen or so health and fitness questions that we ask all of our guests, and see how our answers stack up to every other guest that we've had on. But before we go to the health and fitness part of the questionnaire, for the first question, I got to ask, moving from Kansas City to California, what was what was the thing that you enjoyed the most about the transition, and what was your least favorite thing about the transition moving to California?
My favorite thing was weather, because it was Kansas and Kansas. It was winter in Kansas, and it was always summer in California. So that was the best part of the transition in the moment. The worst part is we decided to move downtown. My dog's a chicken, and he does not like downtown. So making that transition for him, it's 7 months later, and he's still making the transition. So probably say that's the worst part.
I was gonna say there's not that many negatives to moving and living in California, but I mean, I guess that's one of them. But also, I mean, the one thing that I enjoy about being in the Midwest that I think what might be a struggle in California, which is why I ask all the California guests this, is that in the Midwest you can let yourself go a little bit during the winter. I mean, because let's be honest, when you're in a sweater and you're in a jacket, 24/7, you can, put on 5 to 10 pounds, just over time, and you put on that winter weight. But when you're in California, and like you said, it's summer year round, and everyone just seems to be in such great shape. Does that? I mean, you've been there for 7 months, but do you feel that adds any on extra added pressure, just knowing that it is going to be basically bikini season, 24/7?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about that. When I moved here, I was in off season, and so I was literally at my heaviest I'd ever been. Yeah, I got very uncomfortable last off season. I'm not gonna lie, but even I have to remind myself that my heaviest is not bad. It's not bad, and I have to remember that. And yes, it's uncomfortable, but in the end, live your life because I mean, in the end, like you're gonna pass someone no matter where you are on the street. You're like, wow, that person's gorgeous and tiny and looks really good in that maxi dress, and I would look like a hippo. So it's fine. Even when I was on prep and I was 2 weeks from stage, I had that thought, and it's just natural. I mean, you're gonna be like, wow, that person looks really good, and you're like, well, what am I thinking? I'm literally like 20 pounds lighter than I was 3 months ago. So it's like no matter where you are in your stage of life, you just got to be happy and own it because I mean, everyone's somewhere different. And that person, you never know what they're doing. You might see that Barbie girl and then realize, oh, maybe she preps too, and she's in the middle of her prep, even though it's winter. You never know. So,
Well, and I always say, especially with bodybuilding, it is such a mental game, much more than it is a physical game. I mean, your body's going to be, sore a lot, and it's going to be a lot trying on your body, but the mental aspect is just so much more not seen. Yeah, it's not seen because people obviously, I mean, you can't read people's minds yet.
yeah.
But I mean, it's just such a hard thing to really grasp when you're looking at it from the outside. But now, what is one item that you always need to have in your fridge?
Oh, wow. Legitimately egg whites, but I would like my actual answer to be pickles because it's such a good little cheat and it's pretty much nothing. I mean, it's like 1 gram of carb yeah, it's pickles. It's the best answer I have.
That's the second time we've had pickles on. I don't hate pickles. It's just that my dad loves them so much that it's really discerning. Where like it's like I'm never gonna have that many pickles. So yeah, but egg whites. I mean, I used to have eggs all the time after I worked out, but I had them so much to the point where like my digestion just wasn't having it anymore. Because when you have something so much for so long, so now I don't have eggs at all. Well, I'll have them every once in a while, just as long as I don't get like bloated or I don't get just really just get a sick stomach. But now, out of all of your followers that you have on Instagram, what would be one thing that you'd think that they'd be most surprised about to find out about you if they met you in person?
That I'm actually pretty open, I feel like, for the most part. Um, I would say that my hair's curly. I actually have really curly hair and it looks like an afro, so I have to do a lot to like get it together. Yeah, I'd probably say that.
Well, absolutely. And I always say too, for me being 6'3", because I'm sitting down all the time. So when people see me on this, so that's probably one thing that I think they'd be most surprised of too. But now, if someone were to come up to you and say, Kelsey, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the bodybuilding lifestyle and just, competing and whatnot, what would be one thing that you would like to see change?
I would like to see change in the macro mindset, just because everyone's like, oh, macros, it fits in my macros, so I can eat it. I can have Halo Top, and that covers my protein and some carbs and hardly any fat, but some fats. And then I'll have a Snickers bar, and then maybe just one real meal with Whole Foods. And that's a prep meal or day for them. And that's not a lot of people, but it is, the Instagram way to do it. Let's do macros so we can eat Snickers on prep. And that's not it, because when you're in prep, you need the nutrients and to be properly fueled through that. And even not in prep, even in just lifestyle, it's not how you should be doing it. I mean, technically, yes, it hits the parameters, but you want to eat whole foods so that you get the nutrients so your body can properly function, you can stay healthy. And so that's where it's kind of been misconstrued online, and it's kind of taken form in actual life, with different competitors and just lifestyle clients where they think they can eat everything they want all the time. Obviously, on certain days, like a couple times a week, okay, but I mean, you got to keep it together. You can't sustainably eat just whatever you want.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. And one thing that I also hear a lot too that I love to bring up is that, just a little bit more parity when it comes to the judging, because there's some shows, let's be honest, where if you do a show back to back, like one weekend and then the next weekend, one show they might be looking for, like more of a leaner look, more of a softer look, and then the next show they want you to just be, basically just super leaned out and super shredded, where it's like, good luck making that transition in a week, basically, for some of these. So just if there's maybe more like a general consensus of like, this is generally what we want in a competitor. That's one thing that we found out, or that I found out from having a lot of these guests come on. But now,
Well, I have a comment to that real
oh,
quick.
absolutely.
So I do have an opinion. So I agree. The NPC has done put a lot of work into making sure that there is a parameter for what they're looking for. But realistically, let's say you go get a hamburger and I go get a hamburger, and you're like, Shake Shack versus In-N-Out, and you're like, Shake Shack, that's it, In-N-Out, and I'm like, In-N-Out's mine, and that's the best looking and best tasting burger. And no matter what, there's always going to be an overlap if there's going to be a different taste. And so I think you just got to know where you're competing. So like, over here in California, it's primarily Muscle Contest is like the big promoter. Muscle Contest has a certain look they look for. They use the same head judge for bikini versus, I don't know what the main promoter is in like Pennsylvania. I'm sure they're going to be very different. The Midwest, Muscle Mayhem, my first NPC show, looking for a very different look. And you just got to know who the judges are and what they're looking for. And you got to phase to what their taste is.
I was gonna ask, because being in California, so have you tried In-N-Out Burger being there?
No.
Okay.
I
was gonna
no.
say, because everyone just swears by it and says it's like it's the best burger you can ever have. So like, being that, obviously there's none in the Midwest, I just want to ask. But yeah, she's in a show and she's getting ready and she's just done with her show. She's not gonna have an In-N-Out Burger. But yeah, I always just find that
I
interesting.
actually eat burgers. I actually eat a burger every day for my meal right now. I know. Reverse dieting is awesome. But I'm not huge on fast food. I never have been. It's just my form of fast food is Subway, and I haven't even really had Subway in like 2 years. But I just don't do it. I'm just not a person to eat it. But my significant other likes In-N-Out, but he said it doesn't live up to the hype.
Yeah. Well,
So
if I ever went to California, that'll be the first thing I'd try if I ever went to California. But I'm pretty sure, the hype that people put up to it is unrealistic. But now for our two final questions of the questionnaire. If you could go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice you would give her?
I would tell her to get into bodybuilding sooner, because obviously that's not realistic for everybody, but for me personally, it's made a huge impact on my life and maybe able to hit my goals a little bit sooner. But I'm still young. I'm only 23, so I'm only 5 years out from being 18. So yeah, I would just say not even necessarily bodybuilding, but just the industry. I would have gotten to the industry a lot sooner, just because, I mean, it's made a big impact on my life, both physically, mentally, spiritually, and it's really pushed me into a better way of life.
I'm just freaking out because you are like the second guest that I've had on that's actually younger than me. I just turned 25 a couple weeks ago. So I'm just freaking out now because I was like, oh God, I feel old now. Jesus. Quarter life crisis already, or like third life crisis. It's like, good God. But no, yeah, I just find that, and that's just so awesome that you get, it's like, hang on, we're gonna have to make a 5-second pause here where I just get my brain just got a little scrambled up now, so now I gotta re-scramble it. But I always say, if I could go back and talk to my 18-year-old version, first of all, I'd say, start this podcast earlier than you did. Second of all, I'd give them stock advice, where, let's be honest, invest in Amazon, invest in Google, a little bit, make a little cha-ching there. But now for our final question of the questionnaire, if we were to talk to you a year from today, what are some goals that you would have liked to have achieved when it comes to your bodybuilding, or when it comes to your lifestyle nutrition coaching, or just your overall life? What are some goals that you would like to have accomplished if we were to talk to a year from today?
Well, first, most immediate, I'd like to make sure my puppy's potty trained by then. That's a very good goal. Because, I keep looking over because I see him and I'm like, do not be making messes on my house right now. But other than that, I would say I would want to be in a different industry in my primary job. I would want to be doing something differently. So I'm hoping to move more into the fitness industry full time as well. Right now I'm really corporate and it's not necessarily my favorite passion. So I would say that move. And I would like to I would like to be still because so when you nationally qualify, you have that for a calendar year. I would like to at least maintain that status through my next season. Make sure I get nationally qualified again to maintain that. If not, compete on a national stage. But yeah, we'll just see from there. But I for sure want to continue to be nationally qualified just so I have the options open. Um, and yeah, I just want to see some cap growth right on my shoulders too. That'd be a good goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just so awesome. And the two final questions that I love to ask on every single podcast. The first one, I mean, if someone were to walk up to you on the street and say, "Oh my God, you look amazing, I want to get into shape." What type of advice do you like to give them? Because I always say for so many people, the hardest thing for them is to just take that first step into the gym. Because
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest, I'm a little OCD where like if I'm starting a new workout, I got to work out. I got to start it on a Monday because it's the beginning of the week. If I got to work out like at a round number, so it's got to be like 8 o'clock. So if it's 8:01, I got to wait till it's like 8:15 or something like that, so that I can, I'm just weird like that. But also, I've found that once you step into that gym, it is so hard to walk out of it without getting a workout in. What tips do you like to give people just to be able to get their journey started?
It just depends on where they're already at. I would ask them, well, what are you doing now? Like, what you're not doing anything? Okay, well, the first step would be let's get you into a gym and let's find you someone who can teach you the ropes of the gym. So whether it be a personal trainer or whether they come hang out with me at the gym. I mean, I've worked out with a few girls just to show them my workouts and that I've met in California. Who've reached out to me and actually happen to I go to 24 hours, so who go to 24-hour too, and they come and worked out with me. Whether it be that or whether it's like I work out all the time and I'm not seeing any differences and I'm like, okay, well, what are you doing to work out? And then what are you eating? Because that's the next big piece, and you can always address eating first, but I feel like they're going to feel more successful if you get them in the gym first. And that's just my personal opinion. And then it's like, okay, so now that we got you going to the gym a couple times a week, now let's look at your diet. What can we start to phase out? And so my advice would just be, okay, well, let's figure out what you're doing now, make this difference. If you want, you can text me. I can, help you through it. And that's just what I do. I just try and help them figure out what small change they can make immediately. Because you can't just say, okay, so you're eating moderately healthy and you're not going to the gym. Go to the gym and go eat healthy. And they'll be like, okay, yeah, it sounds easy, right? So you got to phase them into something and you have to make one small change at a time.
Yeah, I mean, just taking those baby steps too, because we have so many people that they go and they overtrain, and then they're just like, "Oh, hey, I feel really sore the next day," and it's like, well, that's what happens when you spend like 4 hours in there. I mean, you're gonna feel sore, but just adjusting to that. But now, lastly, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Yeah, my coach Lance Hack at Hack Fit. He has been a huge help, my number one supporter. Super humble. I mean, seriously amazing. I mean, you should even throw him on here because he's very
I'll
knowledgeable.
send him a message right after we're done recording right
Yeah,
here.
yeah. But any listeners, go check him out. He has an awesome page. He has strong competitor group. He's a strong competitor himself, and he's based out of Kansas City, and he's awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome. So again, you guys, Lance Hack, I'll shoot him a message right after this. And again, Kelsey, we cannot thank you enough for coming on the show. But before we finish this up, I need to have a shot of your dog. So could you like tilt the camera
Yeah.
down? Your
Okay.
puppy. I mean, that's the cutest thing ever.
Oh, I know. Okay. He was napping, so
Oh my god.
that's it.
Oh, oh my god.
Yeah.
God, that's so cute. I know I was gonna say I couldn't tell that he was mixed at all because he looks literally just like a golden retriever. I don't
Yeah, he
yeah.
likes Golden, and then my other dog's a little jealous now because
Yep.
I picked up the beeper.
Yep. Yep. Again, yeah, everyone now just drool after we saw that her dog. I mean, again, I'm one of the biggest dog people of all time, but again, Kelsey, we cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast. I really, really appreciate it. And everyone, go and give her a follow. I'll leave a link to all of her stuff down below. And if you have any inquiries or any coaching that you might want to, have her take a look at, definitely more than willing to send her a message. But again, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was fun chatting.
Absolutely. So again, you guys, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.